Hello and welcome to the Input Designs tutorial. In this video, we're going to be learning about the designs that you can use with your FSMs to achieve some fundamental mechanics around input. That means stuff like button combos, a quick tap of the button versus holding a button, as well as button combos, having a specific combination of buttons to be pressed in a row to achieve the desired outcome. And just something to point out, I'm going to be going over a couple of the different types of input actions. So everything that you're learning today, you can sort of mix and match with the different input actions. So for example, we have get key down, get key up, but your project might be using get button down, or get button up. Or if you're using Unity's new input system, there will also be similarly named actions, as well as anybody using third-party assets like Rewired. Those also have similarly named actions. The logic here is the same. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's set up our first design concept. So I'm going to come over here and add a new game object called tap versus hold. And I'm going to give it a new FSM. We'll call this one tap versus hold. And the first thing I'm going to put in here is a get key down. Okay, and we'll put in a space bar. Okay, and when we hit the space bar, we're going to send next. That will go over here. So we'll call this first state wait for input. And we'll call this second state pressed. Okay, now obviously when I play this, we're waiting around here on the first state. You can see that the action is green, so that means it's constantly running every frame, waiting for us to press the specified key, which is space. So I'm going to come over here. So I'm going to go ahead and press space, and it goes to the next state. Okay, obviously. Now if I add a finish transition and send back, but what if I want something to happen if I hold the button instead? Well, it's very simple. You add in a wait action. And over here, you could put in something like half a second, which is 0.5. Now, if it finishes, we're going to send a new event. And I'm going to make a new category of events here. So I'm going to call it input space/space hold. It's going to send that off. Okay. I'm also going to get rid of this finish transition. Input hold will go up here. And I'm going to rename this to tap or hold. And I'll rename this hold. And then in here, I'm going to put in a get key up. Okay, so we have a get key down over here, which is looking for the moment that the button transitions from up to down. And in here, we're looking for the moment the button transitions from down to up. So the key, again, we're just going to add, I'm going to set that to the space bar. And the event that we'll send here will be a new event that I'll call input space/space tap. I'll add that, and this will go here. And I'll call this tap. I'll give these both a next frame event that will send a new event called back to start. And instead of adding the transition locally here, I'm going to come back to the wait for input. I'm going to add a global transition back to start. Okay, so this tap, I'm going to copy this next frame event and put it in with hold as well. That way it resets every time. Okay, so it waits for us to press the space key. And when we do, it comes here. And if we still have the button down, this doesn't fire off. Get key up is waiting for it to go from down to up. So as long as we keep holding it down, this wait action has time to finish its half seconds. And if it does finish, then it goes input hold, which leads us here to hold. And then it sends back to over here. Whereas if we came here, this wait action has half a second to fire off, but if before it finishes, we let go of the space bar, this get key up registers that space bar going up and sends over here to tap instead. Okay, so let's give that a try. Okay, so I tap it, it always goes to tap. If I hold it, it goes to hold. Holding it, hold. Holding it, hold. Okay, and of course you could change the time if you wanted. Take longer, wait for it a second instead. So I can tap, tap, tap. We can hold it for a whole second. And you can see even that if I come here and let go before the hold is finished, it registers as a tap. But hold a little bit and then let go at the very last minute, it still registers as a tap. Okay, so of course you could just do this with your get button down and get button up. You could replace these actions here. Or with your actions for Unity's new input system or third-party assets like Rewired, they'll also have similarly named actions. Okay, so that's tap versus hold. Let's make I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off, and let's make a new game object. We're gonna call this one combos. Okay, I'm gonna add an FSM. On our first state, we're gonna put in an array get next. And it's gonna be getting from an array of strings that we'll use in a get button down action. Because using get button actions uses a string here, which can also be a variable. So whatever's in here, we could get from the array of strings. Okay, so in the array get next, we're gonna use a new variable. Okay, so I'm gonna make a new array, call this one button string array. And it's going to be an array of strings. Now our buttons, of course, if I go to my project settings and my input manager, you'll see that I have a lot of the default settings for Unity's input axes here. So I'm using fire1, fire2, and jump. These are all case sensitive. They must be spelled exactly the same way. So the J needs to be capitalized. There can't be any spaces at the end. There can't be any spaces in between fire and 2, etc. Okay, so back over here, what I'm going to do is say, just as a test, we'll say it's 3 buttons for this combo. First, it's going to be fire1, then it's going to be jump, and then it's going to be fire2. So you have to press all of these in that exact order for it to register the combo. Okay, so I'm going to go to, so back here in state, let's say the array is our button string array. We'll have a loop event. We can call it loop event. We'll add that transition. We'll also have a reset flag, making a new bool variable called reset flag, and a finished event, which will be complete. We'll add that as well. Okay, so I'm going to say the loop event sends down here to the next state, where we're going to put a get button down. Now this get button down is going to get whatever we pull from this array get next. So the result from this array get next, we're going to name as next button string. Now over here, I could set this as a variable as our new next button string variable. Okay, it'll send an event when we do press that. It'll just send something like next. Go down here, and let's just name these. So over here, we'll say get next button. And this one will be wait for input. And this one is combo complete question mark. The way we're going to check if the combo is complete is by coming up here to our array get next and storing the current index. So this will be in a new variable called current index. And the current index is just recording which index the array is currently on in its process of getting the next item. Fire1 is index 0, jump is index 1, fire2 is index 2. Okay, it's zero-based indexing. That's always important to remember, because over here in combo complete, what we're going to do is do an int add that adds to our current index. It adds 1. Now the reason we're doing that is so that this current index number reflects the number of items in the array. So 0 will go to 1, 1 will go to 2, and 2 will go to 3. The reason we want that is because we're going to be using an array length action, which gets the length of our button string array, and it could store it in a new variable that we'll call combo length. Okay, so we're getting the length of it, which is 3. There's 1, 2, 3 items in here. It'll store that as 3 in the length. So this int add is always making sure that our current index reflects the more human readable idea of the entries. What you do then is an int compare. And you say, is the combo length and current index equal? And if they are, we complete the combo. We'll send out here to a new state. We'll call success. And we'll even make that green. But if it's less than or greater than, we don't want it to do anything. So I'm just going to put in a next frame event here. Instead of having to put an event on both of these, and then maybe later I want to change it somehow, putting in just a next frame event to cover both of these possibilities, but putting it after the int compare ensures us that as long as when it gets to this int compare, this equal doesn't fire off, then the state's next action, being next frame event, will let us do our next thing. So this can send something like next. That'll go back to get the next item in the array. So let's take a look at this really quick. This array get next cycles through each of the buttons for our combo, fire1, jump, and fire2. It stores that in this variable here, next button string. It also remembers the current index that it pulled that button from. So if it pulled jump, that means that the index is 1. Then over here in wait for input, it's waiting for the player to press that button, right? Since we're using get button down to test that string that we just got from the array. If the player presses anything else, it doesn't do anything. It just waits here for the player to press that one. If the player does press the button, then it goes next. And in here, we have the length of the array, which is 3. And then you get the current index. And then we add 1 to the current index. And we say, are those two the same? In other words, if we just pressed fire 2, then that means the current index should be 3. And since the combo length is 3, that means that we just pressed the third and final combo button. And this in compare, if it saw that it was equal 3 and 3, it sends off the complete transition. And the complete sends over here to success. But if it doesn't, then it goes to this next action here, which is next frame event, which sends us back up to the top to get the next button. Okay, so I'm just going to add a transition from this complete to a state here. And we're going to test this really quick. So fire 1, it's waiting for me to select fire 1. That's first in our list. So I'm going to click. It's fire 1. Now it's waiting for jump. I'm going to hit jump. And it's waiting for fire 2. I'm going to hit fire 2. And it sends off to success. All right, so the basics of that are done. But what you need, of course, is in this wait for input, put in a wait action. And you wait like half a second. And you send a new event called back. I'm just going to move this out of the way. You want your player to hit those combos back to back. You don't want to let them hit the first one, think about it for a few minutes, hit the next one, and then reward them for that. You want them to press them back to back, or else they don't link them together. They don't chain the combination. So this half second, or even if you're making some really crazy game, you can make it at a quarter of a second or something like that. I'm going to put half because generous, and let's get through this tutorial without me losing to my own example. So I'm going to send back this way to a new state that we'll just call reset. And in here, it's a set bool value. And it's setting that reset flag we had to true. And when that's done, it just comes back up here. Setting this reset flag to true means that when we come to this array get next, it's going to start all the way at the beginning again, instead of picking up from where it left off. But also, what we could do is on the success, add a finish transition and send up to reset as well. So we could do the combo again. So if I press play, you can see that it's always waiting, it's always resetting. But if I hit my fire 1, jump, fire 2, oops, I missed the fire 2. Fire 1, say, okay. Left space, right, there we go, got success. Left space, right, success. But if I go left space and then wait, and then hit right click, it doesn't reward me because I waited too long. Got to get them back to back. Left space, right, success. That's how you could set up the actual system. But one extra little thing I want to give you here is a tool to set up the array of all of your combos, because you could come in here and just put in 3 and then type these in individually like this in each slot for the array. Or what you could do is on this first state, you could add a first state, set this as the new start state. We'll call this init. And even down here where we get the array length, I'm going to put that in the initialized state. Okay, that belongs up here. And then what I'm going to do is set string value. We're going to make a new string variable called my combo string. So in here you would write something like this instead. So it's a little easier to write out, right? And then you have a string split action that takes my combo string. And in here I used commas to separate them. I put comma and a space, so I could put comma here, but I can also use this trim strings option because you'll see that it says remove all leading and trailing white space characters from each separated string, which is what I did just to make it legible for me, right? But in reality, all the string split is looking for is a comma. So it looks for commas and it goes, that's where you split each of these values, and then it adds it to a new array. And you can put it in your button string array. Okay, so this one, I'm gonna say it's fire 1, jump, jump. Okay, so we're gonna set that string. It splits it up by these commas, puts it all into that array, gets the array length, and I'm gonna add a finish transition that continues to do everything else we already learned. Okay, so I'm gonna press play, and now I'm gonna do fire, fire, jump, jump, and I got a success. Okay, and that's just a little easier of a way that you could set up your button combinations, especially if you're doing a game where you need lots and lots of button combinations. You don't want to have to come through your variables, type in the amount you want, and then go through that every time. Now, to make this even easier, what you might want to do is, well, first of all, let me just name this FSM to button combo. I'm going to add a new component, a Playmaker FSM, and we'll call this combo builder. Let's go over to here, and in here you can put in your get button down for all of the things that you press, right? So you have fire 1, you have fire 2, and fire 3, or let's do jump, right? Okay, we're gonna send an event. We'll make a new event called input fire 1. New event input space / space fire 2, and input space / space fire 3. And you could send off to each of these states. And in here, you do a string append. String variable is my combo string, and the value that you're adding to the end of this is fire 1. Now I can go ahead and copy this, paste it in here. And this one is fire 2, paste it in here as well. And this one is jump. Okay, and then these can all go back. Now in the variables, I'm gonna say my combo string is an output, so we could see it over here in the inspector. And actually, I'm just gonna go ahead and add a comma to these. Hit play. Now I can go fire 1, fire 2, fire 1, fire 2, jump, jump, fire 1. Now they all appear over here. Select them all. And I'm hitting Control-C or Command-C on a Mac. You can also come up here and go copy. And now I could stop the game, come over to my button combo FSM, and in here, I'll paste them in. One thing to note really quick is that it did put a comma on the final value. We're just gonna get rid of that last comma, just to make sure it doesn't give us a blank button press at the end. Fire 1, fire 2, fire 1, fire 2, jump, jump, fire 1. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the combo builder off, and in my variables, I'm gonna go to the button string array, and I'm gonna make it an output so I can see the order in which to press. Okay, so I'm gonna go here, press play. And you can see our combo that we just created in the builder is now set up nicely over here. So it's fire 1, fire 2, fire 1, fire 2, jump, jump, fire 1. Success. Now, one last thing that has to do with combos that I wanna show you. I'm gonna add a new FSM, and in here, this will be our key combos. With key combos, you could make an array called your key combo array and do something like in a num, and the num type, you can come here to Unity Engine and go down. You don't have to click and hold this arrow button. You can actually just hit the K key and it'll take you to it. But I just wanted to show you that it's here, called key code, right? But like I said, because it's the only one that has a K in this entire list, my mouse can be anywhere when I hit K and it selects key code. And I can say the size is like 3, and then each of these is a key now. So I could hit space and then M in here for mouse 0 and mouse 1. I could say mouse 0, and here I'm gonna hit M again a few times until I get to mouse 1. So we hit space and then left and then right. Okay, you could do that with the same design patterns that I showed you in the button combo. And then you could use in a num to string, and you could say that again, you're using Unity Engine, key code. You can have a new variable for this, key code in num, and save it as a new variable, key code underscore string. Okay, so that'll just convert that key code to a string. But then you're gonna have to go through some processing to use a string compare if you press something and all that. So what you actually wanna do is head over to the ecosystem type in key string, and you have some really handy actions in here. You have get key code to string. Okay, so you would just hit the get button if you don't have it. I already have it, that's why this is green. You have get key down from string, and you also have get key up from string, as well as get key from string. So the way these are set up, I have an example over here. See that it's very similar. All of these are the key code names that Unity uses. I use string split again and array length. Everything's the same over here. Okay, so that's the same. And then I come over here to wait for input. And in here, I have a get key up from string, which is just getting the next combo key that we got back here from the array as the key code that this input action is listening for. And if I do press it and then let it up, this event gets sent next. And everything else pretty much functions the same. This is a really nice action here from the ecosystem, get key up from string. I even have the wait here, same thing. And actually, I lied about this being the last thing. Add a new FSM. We're gonna call this one combo hold. Hit edit. So this one is for when you're looking for a combinations of buttons to be held. So I'm gonna do a really quick. We're gonna have a get key down, and let's say that it's gonna be looking for space. Put in another key down. It's gonna be looking for left shift. And both of these are going to store the result of a new variable we'll call space underscore is down. And left shift, I'm going to make a new variable, left shift underscore is down. Okay, and with those, we can put in a bool all true. And we'll have two variables that it's looking for. Left shift is down and space is down. So we'll be running every frame. And it'll send an event next. Okay, so this only fires off if both of these keys are pressed at the same time. So I'm gonna press play, holding space, nothing's happening. Okay, nothing's happening when I just press space. Left shift, pressing, also nothing happens when I just press left shift. But if I press left shift and space, it goes to the next state. Okay. Now, that only works if I press down. If you're waiting for a hold, you're going to have to use just a get key. So for this one, we're going to be doing space, space is down, and left shift is down. These are going to be running every frame. And now this one's going to be a little bit more reliable. So I could begin by holding shift or space, doesn't matter, but you begin by holding one, and now I can press the other, and it immediately recognizes it. Okay, because if you can see, I'm just gonna put a finish transition that sends back here so we could play with it a little bit more. The starting state of these bools is now just dependent on whether or not they are up or down, as opposed to the moment of transition. So get key is a more effective way to do the combo holds. So if I hold shift, you'll see that it's turned true. If I let go, it turns false. If I hold space, it also returns true. And now that gives me the opportunity to send that off. Now, of course, we get this little infinite loop error because I have a state that sends right back to it. That's how you can get a combo hold setup. So that's how you get a combo hold setup if it just doesn't matter the order. Alternatively, you might want to require the player to start with one key before pressing the other. So for example, you might want them to start with space and then press left shift. So in the first one, you'll be looking for spaces down. So in here, I'm just gonna get rid of this bool all true. So in here, what you could do is put in a get key down that is looking for space, and we'll send next. Okay, we'll call this one wait for space. And it goes off to the next state where you have a get key up that's also listening for space, but it's waiting for it to be let go. And if it does, then you send back. Okay, but while you're here, you can also put in your left shift. and we'll say next on that one. You say wait for both. This one is success. Okay, it's waiting for you to press the space key down. It comes to the next state. If you let go of the space key, it sends back because it needs you to have both of them while holding the space key first. But then while you're here, you get a get key down for left shift. So if we play this, to begin with, nothing from left shift, right? It needs me to start with space. I'm holding it, but if I let go, it sends me back holding it. But now if I press left shift while I'm holding space, I go to success. So that's how you could set up a requirement for not only the combination, but the order of that combination of inputs. Okay, now the last thing that I want to show you, done with combos, create a new empty, magnitude as button. Right click and add FSM. We're gonna have a get axis. So in Unity's input system, whether you're using the original one or the new input system or some third-party one, they all have options for axes. Because for a lot of inputs, you need left and right. It uses the same axis to give you a single number. So for example, if I put in horizontal and I store this new variable as horizontal, press play. Horizontal in my project settings, my input manager, is listening for left and right and A and D. So similarly, you might be using Unity's new input system, which could be listening to an axis that you've set for left and right and A and D. Now you see that currently it's at 0, and while it's running every frame, if I hold left, it goes all the way to -1, and if I hold right, it goes all the way to 1. So using axes as a way to read input on a scale might be a little confusing to use when you're thinking, well, what if I'm just checking to see if any input's coming from it? Well, the thing is that you can always use a float compare. Since the value that it's giving you is a float, you could say that my horizontal float that I'm getting from my get axis, you can compare it to 0. You're running every frame, and if it's less than or greater than, you'd be sending something like next. So they both do the same thing. As long as it's not equal, it does something. So this is no input, or rather waiting for input. And this one is getting input. Okay, now you could put these over here as well. Except instead of sending next for less than or greater than, you could send it for equal. I'll send back. So when I hit play, it's not doing anything because it's at 0, not pressing anything. If I hit left, it goes over here. And if I let go of it, it goes back. If I hit right, it goes over to getting input. If I let go of it, it goes back. Using a single axis, that's how you would do it. But with the get axis vector, what you could do is, well, I'm gonna get rid of this get axis, pop in the get axis vector. It's listening for horizontal and vertical, and it's just listening for a vector, but you can also store a magnitude. The magnitude you could say is just input magnitude. And that's what we'll be listening for. So it's the same idea. I'm gonna copy that axis vector and put it in here instead of the get axis. This is going to be listening for input magnitude as well. And just to satisfy this little warning, I'm going to put in a vector 3. Even though we're not making any use of it, I'm doing it to shut up the little red warning. So press play, and you'll see that whenever I press up, down, left, or right, W, A, S, or D, any one of them, the magnitude will increase and it'll send off to the next state. See, they all go up to 1. I'm hitting different ones. Okay, so those are some of the fundamental design patterns that you're going to be using for your game's input systems. Be sure to check out our other videos to learn all the various features of Playmaker. Links to more learning resources are in the description.